Alright folks, today I'm here to present to you another case of environmental storytelling in the Walking Dead universe. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this series at this point, but for those of you who are new, environmental storytelling is a technique where a series of objects or bodies will be laid out in a way that conveys a story to the viewer without explicitly stating what that story is. In today's video, I'm going to be taking a closer look at the still-powered Greenwood facility featured in The Ones Who Live episode 4. I'm going to structure this video by taking you through the story as it was first presented to us, before going back and attempting to piece together the evidence to figure out what exactly happened here. These videos aren't meant to convince you I'm right or anything like that, just to start a conversation around a small topic in this franchise. We will probably never actually get answers to these questions anyway, so it's all just for fun in the end. If you have suggestions for future topics, let me know in the comments down below, and drop a sub to see more videos like this. After taking a leap of faith by tackling her husband from a CRM helicopter into a river during a severe thunderstorm, Michonne and Rick would crawl out of the freezing water and scramble towards the apartment complex nearby that we would come to know as Greenwood. When inside, the frantic couple would make their way to a suite upstairs that they discover is fully automated and powered, equipped with still running radios, lights, controlled heating, and even a Roomba, which is quite the strange sight for a random building in the middle of the wasteland. But unlike most of these environmental stories we cover, this place was spotless. Whoever lived here was clearly very intelligent given their setup and collection of smart person books. But with no food left in the fridge, it seems this place's occupants had been gone for quite some time. But why? Well, right now, it didn't matter for Rick and Michonne as they used this opportunity to air out their grievances with each other until the sun comes up, before noticing their helicopter from the night before had crashed into a neighboring tower, meaning not only did Michonne save their lives, but the CRM would now think they're dead. But as the two leave the apartment suite after breaking out into an argument once again, we see another CRM helicopter fly from the distance before blowing up the crashed aircraft to hide any evidence of their existence. Just as Michonne finds herself on the other side of a glass door in the main floor lobby with a horde of walkers congregating on the other side that smashes during the explosion, flooding the complex with the dead as the building begins to shake. And as the two begin to descend deeper into the crumbling apartment, we see power active throughout the entire facility, meaning whoever was here must have had quite the operation brewing, which is confirmed as at the end of the hall, the two would discover what looks to be a lab with a couple scientist walkers roaming around on the inside. Now, this indicates Greenwood was not abandoned by its residents, rather it fell in horrific fashion. I think this room may actually be a key component to what happened here. We only get a brief glimpse at it through a window, and I'm not going to pretend I know what the hell they were growing, but for two highly intelligent scientists to just die in a room like that with no external walkers around, while still wearing their lab jackets as if in the middle of their work, is not natural. And I can't help but notice just how dirty their clothes are, especially for a cleaner than average looking room. At first, I thought it was just normal stains from decomposition, which it still very well could be, but to me, it looks more like something was splattered onto them as we see it around their backs, sleeves, and torsos. Maybe as a result of a messed up experiment or something toxic that got into their systems. I can't really find another cause of death from the brief glimpse we see, so let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. It's a strange scene for sure, but as the walkers from outside begin to close in, Rick and Michonne are forced to barricade themselves deeper into a neighboring room containing a gym. However, this is where the two would uncover some of the answers to this mystery we were looking for, as they come across a body who clearly took their own life by electrocution via a helmet strapped to a fuse box, along with a note naming themselves as Lakshmi Patel reading, "It's just time. When I conceived of Greenwood, it was so clear. Like-minded innovators in various fields seeking to live off the grid, to create a new, more sustained and hopeful tomorrow. Our motto, Progress and redemption through innovation is now like a joke to me, but I can't face how much I have failed everyone. I cannot go another day continuing to watch our mission die. I am sorry. Let me be remembered as one who refused to leave the world the same way I found it. Along with the note, we see posters created by what we can assume to be the scientists that talk of not letting your past define you, keeping hope alive, and bringing about the future through innovation, explaining how everything is still running here all this time later. However, as the dead begin pressing on the barricaded door, the two devise a plan of escape by using the gym equipment as weapons. But while fighting their way out, the collapsing building would cause a chandelier to fall and trap Michonne in the rubble. But thankfully, after refusing to leave her, Rick would manage to pull her out as the two make their way back to the apartment suite from the night before that hasn't yet begun to crumble. This near loss helps Rick snap out of his fear of fleeing the CRM as the two embrace each other deeply that night. And as their section begins collapsing the next morning, the now rejuvenated couple fight their way through the halls before making their way outside, and driving off in a hybrid vehicle converted to consume electricity or ethanol as its fuel source. The Greenwood facility, its technological advancements, and its tragic past collapse in the rearview mirror. Now, the story left behind here is extremely interesting to me. The empty fridge tells me despite their advancements, these people were not able to sustain their own crops having been in an apartment building with no rooftop garden, explaining why so many plants were dead in the lab. But just chalking the situation up to they all starved doesn't seem satisfying to me. If that were the case, why wouldn't they just leave? I get walkers could have been congregating outside the lobby, but Rick and Michonne got in easily. There were other ways. Not to mention, they had created ethanol-powered vehicles for escape right outside the building. Lakshmi going down with the ship after perceiving this place's failure as her own makes sense, but the other scientists, the idea they just lied there and starved just doesn't sit right. It's possible they could have taken their own lives, but for what reason? I understand this place was pretty awesome, but come on, you could at least try to go hunt. Lab crops weren't your end-all be-all. As mentioned, in my opinion, their clothes seem far dirtier than they should be considering they're in a relatively clean room from what we can see. I understand bodies can release some nasty stuff when they decay, but with no other source of death present and the strange splattered look to the stains, I'm gonna double down and say something toxic either got onto them or into their system, causing them to uncontrollably excrete waste onto themselves and each other before death, in an area we cannot see from the angle given. It's not the most glamorous way of going out, and it's quite possible I'm just looking way too close into this. Or maybe the stains are hints there was an accident in this lab. Perhaps the desperation of seeking advancement had got the better of these scientists. Lakshmi's note tells us how this place was essentially founded, as many like-minded academics came together to live off the grid, which tells me in order to organize something like this, these people more than likely came from some of the nearby super colonies such as Portland and left in order to fulfill their desires. But the note doesn't tell us exactly how things failed here, only that they did before she ended it all out of shame. Regardless, I'm not going to attempt to piece together a story as to what happened here, but again, I'm just theorizing based on what I've noticed, so it's entirely possible I can misinterpret or miss some evidence altogether. But like always, this is where you guys come in. I'd love to hear what you believe happened here in the comments down below. Immediately after the dead began to walk, most metropolitan areas became hotspots for death, but once the chaos settled, some of these cities such as Portland and Omaha would rise out of the ashes, establishing super colonies that would attract people from all kinds of backgrounds, some of which were highly intelligent academics such as Lakshmi Patel, who believed they could create something even better for the future, using innovative technology off the grid from the colony's control. So once an apartment building untouched by the flames of Operation Cobalt was located, those who wanted to do something great would use the radio systems to organize their plans before leaving their respected colonies for the complex in secret. And although some felt guilt taking their expertise away from the masses, they would arrive in time believing this would be the start of a new future. And under Lakshmi's leadership, work would begin experimenting with self-sustaining energy systems, and before they knew it, they were essentially living like kings at the end of the world, even more than those within the colonies as they automated all systems to fit their desired needs. But one thing they could never quite figure out was how to support agriculture within the building. The idea was to make these complexes completely self-sustaining in hopes of maybe bringing colonies back to the abandoned metropolitan areas one day. But the truth was, they just couldn't produce enough to sustain themselves, and even if they could, beans and carrots just wouldn't do long term. Now, with out-of-the-box thinkers as our featured characters, we ourselves will have to think out of the box as to how this scene could have possibly shaped out. So, my proposal, their focus on advancement would begin to shift towards lab-grown meat under Lakshmi's instructions. But with the crops they had already dead, they were going to have to exponentiate the process, using experimental methods that would inevitably make the scientists who were supposed to bring them salvation fatally ill, as they remained locked in the lab while drowning in their own fluids. Most people have the respect to put down their fellow survivors once turned, so there would need to be a pretty good reason why Lakshmi would leave them locked away. So I think a contaminant tainting their agricultural work area would make a lot of sense. Although I will admit there's no evidence of lab-grown meat anywhere from the brief glimpse in that room, and the theory as a whole does feel a bit Fallout. If I'm being honest, I'm not even really sure how the process fully works, but they've done crazier stuff in the past. So maybe you have a better idea for how these scientists died given the evidence we've been over. Regardless, any scientists left following the accident would either flee for the colonies once again, or start their own projects with their newfound experience. But Lakshmi couldn't bear to move on. She had brought these people together to build a brighter future. Progress and redemption through innovation was their motto. She wanted to redeem humanity through their advancements. But she was the one who got cocky, instructing the scientists to find a shortcut for food. In her eyes, the accident and inevitable crumbling of their built-up community was all her fault. And feeling the immense guilt of this tragic loss, Lakshmi would write her final words explaining her intentions to anybody who would one day listen in the future. And after saying goodbye to the world while regretting her failures in isolation, she would flick on the switch to the fuse box, assuring Greenwood would be lit up for years to come as her light goes out for good. Alright, now, is this interpretation perfect? No, they never are. Placing the deaths of the scientists is by far the toughest part of putting the story together, but I think my theory makes sense. At the very least, it's interesting. We've seen all kinds of grand plans to save the world across this franchise, but I think given they succeeded in their agricultural issue, these people could have really done some good for the future, judging by what they were able to accomplish with only a handful of scientists. This interpretation of the story shows how one little mistake can bring everything crumbling down, but please let me know what you think happened here in the comments down below. Do you think my theory is accurate, or do you think I'm way off base? I'd love to hear all about it. But that's gonna do it for me today, folks. As always, thank you so much for watching.